Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an Atheist on Facebook Live. I used to be a preacher, but that wasn't me you saw just a second ago on the screen. I'm Dan Barker, a former minister, but now co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Today we are talking about politicking from the pulpit. And since this is Facebook Live, if you have questions and are watching live, you can drop your questions in the comments below or send an email to this address here, askanatheist@ffrf.org. With me today are two very smart, very capable attorneys who work for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Rebecca Markert is the legal director here at FFRF, and FFRF attorney Chris Line, he's a large part of his duties are discovering, identifying, and resolving unconstitutional acts on the part of government entities and public schools. So welcome to the show, Rebecca and Chris.
Thanks.
So we're going to talk about churches and pastors who politic. Is there anything wrong with that? If there is, what's wrong with that, Rebecca?
Yes, so churches, like all 501c3 organizations, are prohibited from getting involved in political campaigns. They are tax-exempt organizations. They have favorable treatment under our tax laws. So they're actually prohibited from engaging in what we call electioneering or politicking. So that means that they're not allowed to do things like endorse candidates. They can't publish any communications that would lead someone to believe that they favor or oppose a particular candidate, and they cannot, make campaign contributions or do any sort of expenditures for the benefit of a particular campaign. So they can do a little bit of political type of work. I think people get confused a little bit when we're talking about this because churches and 501c3 organizations like FFRF are able to lobby. So they can lobby on a piece of legislation in Congress or in the state legislatures. They can even work on ballot initiatives because if you have a ballot initiative going on in your state, even though you're technically voting on that referenda, under the law, the people are considered the legislature. So that's actually a lobbying activity.
So lobbying is not politicking. Right?
Lobbying is not politicking. But so like we said before, they can't endorse candidates. They can't do anything that would support or oppose a particular political campaign. But they can engage in nonpartisan work surrounding the election. So they can do nonpartisan voter education.
Like on their issues that are important to their...
Exactly.
Like with us, issues that are important to FFRF.
That's right. But they have to do it on a nonpartisan basis. And then they're able to also get out the vote efforts, again, on a nonpartisan basis. And they are allowed to have candidate forums where they can invite the candidates to come and speak to their members here for churches, to their congregations and things like that. But there are certain rules that apply with that too. So they cannot just bring one particular candidate in. They have to invite all candidates who are in the election. So there's a lot of sort of investigations that Chris has to undergo when we get these types of complaints to make sure that what they're doing and what has been reported to us is actually a violation of our tax code.
So before we go to Chris, and Chris has a lot of the data here, Trump said, and others have said, that this IRS prohibition is tying the free speech of pastors, So in general principle, why is it wrong for a church or a nonprofit? I mean, what's the actual problem here?
Well, so one of the biggest problems is that they are a tax-exempt organization. They are receiving favorable treatment and benefits for their status under the law. So they don't have to pay taxes, and any contributions that they receive, those contributions are tax deductible on the donor's behalf. So we've decided as a people that those contributions then can't go for political activity.
Because the rest of us are having to make up what they're not paying,
Exactly.
basically. So if they're allowed to politic, it's kind of like all of us are doing the same.
That's right. That's right. So when the free speech issue comes up, I mean, they are able to speak freely. They just cannot then avail themselves of the tax-exempt status. Yeah. So if they want to politic and endorse candidates and things like that, then they need to start paying taxes.
Well, I was going to say amen to that, but I won't. So, Chris, do you have some examples?
Yeah, we can do some examples. I'll just first start by saying, as Rebecca said, FFRF is a registered 501c3, and we take those obligations and those benefits very seriously. It's a privilege to have that status, but all over the country, there's pastors who just are making a mockery of it, of both the status and of the IRS by openly flouting the rules, by engaging in politics and actively endorsing candidates and things like that. So recently, FFRF wrote several letters to the IRS after at least 5 different churches in Ohio campaigned for a senatorial candidate. For example, on April 30th, one of the churches, Northwest Baptist Church in Toledo, Ohio, invited Josh Mandel, a Republican candidate for the Ohio Senate primary election, and Ted Cruz to come and speak to its members. The church advertised the event on its Facebook as a gathering to join both Mandel and Cruz as they rally for the upcoming Ohio primary. So clearly about the election.
But Cruz isn't from Ohio. He was just there to endorse.
Yeah, I guess some people would find that as appealing and would make them more likely to vote. But we do have a clip, I believe, from the church.
And let's welcome the next senator of the state of Ohio, Josh Mandel. Thank you. Good to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thanks for opening up your house of worship. I really appreciate you doing this. We've had so many Baptist pastors throughout the state who've been welcoming us.
That's pretty blatant then, isn't it? That's a church, that's a pulpit and a church.
Right, and obviously we don't know, as far as we're aware, it seems like they didn't invite, it's not like they invited both candidates and it just so happened that only Josh Mandel showed up at all these churches across Ohio. It seems very clear that they're trying to campaign for a certain...
and also he introduced him as the next senator from the state of Ohio.
Yeah. So you might be able to figure out who the church is trying to, would like to win the election.
Do you have a clip of Cruz? There's one.
Yeah, I think we also have a clip of Cruz coming on stage.
He traveled a long way to come to Toledo. He did the whole trip without a mask. And I'm proud to introduce you my friend, Senator Ted Cruz. God bless the great state of Ohio.
Eye of the Tiger and the Rocky theme and this obvious political stuff going on.
This is clear, and we know that event took place actually on a Saturday. It wasn't during the Sunday services, but clearly this is an event in a church. It's a campaign event. This is not in any way, they talk about the free speech rights of pastors and things. There's no, speech here going on. They're just saying, hey, check out these candidates, vote for them. This is who the church is endorsing and would like you to elect, Josh Mandel in this case.
So is that pastor breaking the law?
We believe he is. So I think, Chris, you were the one, did you send the letter?
Maddie. So, our intake attorney, Maddie, wrote 5 letters to 5 different churches, all stops that Josh Mandel went through. I assume they all looked very similar to this one with, pastors inviting him on stage and endorsing him. And I believe there was a letter, some 150 pastors had officially endorsed him for the Senate there. So this is clearly a problem.
So what can we do about this? What are we doing about it?
So we write to the IRS. Unfortunately, it's a pretty opaque process. We write. They have a system set up to receive complaints, an official complaint receiving system. We send in the complaint and hope that they take action to do something about this or to write. We unfortunately don't get to see what they do. We don't hear back from the IRS about steps or action they've taken. Fortunately, it seems like it may not be that much given how often this is occurring, and seemingly without any sort of punishment on the behalf of churches.
So our letters are really just a letter to the IRS asking them to investigate further, that we believe a violation of the tax code has occurred and we would like them to investigate. And like Chris said, they don't really give us any information because of taxpayer privacy laws. But sometimes you will hear of the penalties are things like stripping them of their tax-exempt status, or they could get a letter from the IRS saying that they need to do better, something like that. We're not going to necessarily hear about it unless the church crows about it, or if there had been in previous years, the IRS will list all the organizations who've had their tax-exempt status revoked. But, we really don't really hear about that. But on the bright side of things, the Congress this year has, in its appropriations bill, increased funding for the IRS to take on these enforcement measures. And FFRF and our lobbyist, Mark Dan in Washington, has been working hard to make sure that the IRS has the money to undertake these enforcement actions that we're asking them to do.
Yeah, like if somebody's speeding down the interstate and there's no highway patrol, then what's the point of having a law, right?
Right. If we're just sending these complaints to the IRS and there's nobody there, they don't have the team and staff and support to investigate these things and to take action and to try to enforce them, then there's not much that we can do.
You said that they could lose their tax-exempt status. Why would a church care about that? I mean, what would be the penalty to a church if that happened?
Well, because donors and contributions, donors want to give money and have that be tax deductible on their own taxes. So that, losing revenue stream is a big carrot for that.
Right, they're essentially subsidized by, the taxpayers, and they would lose that if they, choose. Which, of course, as Rebecca pointed out, is a choice they can make.
Yeah.
They can hold events like this if they want. They just need to stop, being tax exempt and getting the benefits of that status.
Are there some more examples that we have?
Yeah. So on February 4th of this year, Redeemer Apostolic. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. Apostolic Church hosted Pastor Joshua Feuerstein. My gosh, you guys
Something like that. I don't know either.
Joshua Feuerstein to perform a prayer revival. At this event, he openly endorsed Jerome Davison for U.S. Congress. He even acknowledged that his endorsement of Mr. Davison was illegal and threatened the IRS to take action against him. We also have a clip from that event.
Stay standing with me. I'm going to do something illegal. The IRS tells me that because I'm a preacher, that I'm legally not allowed to endorse a candidate. And I know, as a matter of fact, we have reporters here tonight and people watching around the world. We have reporters that follow America's Revival from Newsweek to do hit pieces on us. And so I'm just going to say this and broadcast it around the world. And I'm going to look at the IRS right in the face. My name is Joshua Feuerstein, the founder of America's Revival. And tonight, I officially endorse Jerome Davis for Congress of the United States of America. And let me say to the IRS, come at me, bro.
That's unbelievable.
Come at me, bro.
I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's knowingly violating the law.
And so we immediately wrote to the IRS, as soon as we saw this, we wrote to the IRS and said, please take him up on his offer and do something. And if they're not if something like this isn't going to be something the IRS is going to be taking action on, when would they ever? This is clearly, he's asking for it. He's saying, please do something about me, and take action. So hopefully that they will.
Yeah, because what's the point of having a law if you can just thumb your nose at it, especially this blatantly?
Yeah, and as you know, FFRF sued the IRS in 2012 on this exact issue, saying you need to enforce the Johnson Amendment, and that case basically ended with them sort of saying, here's some things, we will, don't worry, we'll enforce, the amendment. And since that time, we've only seen more of this type of stuff with these brazen pastors just coming out and like I said, it's an opaque process, so we won't necessarily know whether they're being warned or what's happening on the inside, but it just seems like they're, getting away with this.
But in our lawsuit, didn't they respond by telling us that they have an officer, a person in place They assured us that there's somebody doing this, right?
Yeah, so part of the lawsuit was the impetus for the lawsuit was that we found out that one of the IRS administrators said that they don't enforce the amendment, or the Johnson Amendment, and so we sued to say you're supposed to, and in our negotiations they proved to us that they did have somebody in place to take on these enforcement actions.
So that guy was jumping up and down. What was that all about?
Yeah, I mean, this is where they're at. That they're just so, I mean, like, so brazen. They're just so unafraid and so willing to do it. And I should note, I guess, that it's not every church. I think a lot of churches understand the value of the Johnson Amendment and definitely support it. And in cases where we've talked with the Johnson Amendment, there have been many churches who say, please keep this. Like, we want the Johnson Amendment in place because it's useful for organizations and churches as well, because it prevents them from becoming political. Because without the shield of the Johnson Amendment, what's to stop all the parishioners from saying, like, hey, we're not coming to your church anymore if you don't endorse this? Like, why are you not endorsing this person? We don't support you as a church. It helps it stay out of the fray of politics as well.
I think that's an important point, too, because parishioners and congregants do not want their pastors and preachers telling them who to vote for. I think there have been studies where, 8 out of 10 parishioners do not want pastors to politic, and that's an important thing to know. And it makes sense, too. I mean, you don't want to go, nobody wants to be told who to vote for. You can make these decisions yourself.
I remember when I was in the pulpit, I would never have dared to presume that I knew what the congregants were going to vote on for a certain candidate. That was a totally separate realm from the gospel and all that.
Yeah. Well, I think the other interesting aspect of a lot of this intake is, obviously we're an organization that represents atheists and agnostics, other people who find themselves to be free from religion, but a lot of these complainants are people who are actually churchgoers. They're there in the pews hearing the preachers do this, and saying, hey, I was at church and this didn't seem right.
You got another example? Or?
Yeah, so on Sunday, May 15th, 2022, Pastor Greg Locke of Global Vision Church, many people know who he is. He's very famous for bad reasons. He actually told his congregation that if they vote Democrat, he doesn't even want them around the church. He told them to get out. He goes on this insane rant, which he often does. That's what he's known for, is his crazy rant.
Was he at the January 6th?
I believe he was. Yep. My understanding is, he was. But I can't really describe the clip any better than we can see it. So if we just watch it.
If you vote Democrat, I don't even want you around this church. You can get out. You can get out, you demon. You can get out, you baby butchering election thief. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. I don't care how mad that makes you. You get pissed off as you want to. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat in this nation. They are God-denying demons that butcher babies and hate this nation. They hate this nation. Get mad all you want to. I don't care if you stand. I don't care if you throw tomatoes, praise God. I'm about to throw a microphone up in his house. CNN can eat my dirty socks. You cannot be a Democrat and a Christian. You cannot. Somebody say amen. The rest of you, get out. Get out. Get out in the name of Jesus.
So why would anybody think that was partisan?
Yeah, but he doesn't. I don't know what his position or his church's position is on politics or whatever. So it was a very famous video that went around. We wrote a letter. Many other groups wrote letters. It actually started a trend on TikTok where people were complaining about not just his church, but a lot of churches. It really helped bring this issue to the forefront just because of how egregious that was. You saw this, perhaps the most egregious case I've ever seen of politicking. He literally is telling his congregants, if you are supporting a certain political party, leave now, So we wrote that letter, and then, like I said, many people on TikTok were complaining. He clearly faced some strong backlash because later on he issued sort of a response to what had happened. So I think we have a clip of that, of what he said.
I got an attorney. And I dissolved our stinking 501c3 in this church because the government ain't gonna tell me what I can and what I can't say. So IRS, we don't need your stupid tax-exempt status. You can put it in a bag and burn it in your front yard for all we care. I renounce 501c3 communism in this church. So we'll say what we want to, Skippy Lou. And the IRS and the FBI and everybody we've been turned into can eat my dirty socks on live TV. I revoke our 501c3 status, and IRS, we don't give two flips what you think about it. We're squeaky clean, give 90% of our money away, and we ain't afraid of you because this is America, and we got a constitutional right to say what needs to be said, even when it chaps your hide and makes you feel bad about yourself. So put me in the news again, get mad again, send your protesters again, threaten to kill me again. I ain't stopping, I ain't quitting, I ain't gonna back up, pack up, slack up, or shut up until I've been taken up by the glory of God. As a matter of fact, I'm just getting started. I'm just getting started.
That looks like the love of God, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it's interesting he's getting so upset here because basically he's very angry about it, but he basically just understands what needs to happen. You know, like he can say what he wants to say. He just needs to not, claim exemption. And unfortunately, it's not clear, A, whether they ever were tax exempt or not. There's a lot of confusion about this, and unfortunately, because of the way the process works, we're not able to get all the info. So as far as we can tell, some people had noted that it seems like he may never have had a 501c3 status, so he couldn't have revoked it. There's some question about that. The other thing, and we note this in a letter we wrote, a second letter after this video came out, saying, hey, he says he's not a 501c3. He says he doesn't want those benefits anymore. IRS, please make sure he's not getting these benefits anymore. Of course, we wrote to them. But we're not able to ascertain whether he gets those or not, because a confusing thing that happens with churches is they don't actually have to register as a 501c3. There's a provision of the IRS code which allows them to just get those benefits. Now, they're still required to abide by all the rules of a 501c3. So this isn't some special loophole where they get to do whatever they want. They have to follow the rules of a 501c3, but they're not required to register in order to get those benefits. So it's possible either he never registered, or even now not being registered or revoking his registration, if that was what occurred, that he could still be trying to claim tax exemptions despite that. So, and unfortunately, we're not going to know.
So,
that.
Rebecca, what happens to a parishioner who gives money to that church and they try to write it off on their taxes?
Well, they won't be able to now if he's saying that they're not a tax-exempt organization. And, I mean, ideally, in that situation, he would also be informing those congregants that these contributions are no longer tax-deductible. But like Chris said, we're really not going to know because we're not even really sure if he did originally register, what this dissolution of the organization really was. But yes, from any donor to a 501c3 that's been dissolved should be notified that their contributions are no longer tax deductible.
So nobody's stopping him from saying whatever he wants, right? It's just an IRS thing, right?
Yeah, it's, as we said before, it's not a free speech issue at all. It's just whether you get tax exemption or not. He can say whatever he wants. He can politic and endorse candidates and everything, but then he just is not eligible to receive tax benefits for that. So it's just you have to pick or choose, which is why I said it was so funny that he's so angry about it in the video. It's just him basically saying, this is the path I've chosen. I don't want these restrictions, so we're not going to be a 501c3. Like I said, whether that's true or not, we don't know. But if that is true, then I don't know why he's so angry. It's just he did exactly what he should do in that case. So.
I think I heard that in some cases the IRS revokes the status, like for 1 year, sometimes,
and
then they get it back.
Yeah, they can do that, and it can be reinstated. There's a lot of different ways that the IRS can correct the behavior.
And presumably that would be helpful. Like they go, oh, yeah, we definitely, this guy or someone, we need to be involved in politics. They get rid of the status, notice that nobody wants to give them money anymore, and then they go, oh, actually, you know what? Maybe it was better the other way around, and we want this, special benefits, and we're going to
follow the rules in order to get those.
What if Annie Laurie and I were to act like, or you two were to act like that preacher, and we were going on Facebook Live, you need to vote, you know? I bet you we would lose more than half of our members just like that. They don't want us to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
nobody wants groups that they're involved in necessarily to get involved in politics. There's political groups for that. And presumably, if you were wanting to donate your money to a political group or a political action group or something like that, that's where you'd be sending your money. You wouldn't be sending it to this church or FFRF or whatever. You support them to do that mission, whatever mission they are as a nonprofit, or to support the church, the religion that you're in. It shouldn't be used for politics. And that brings up another good point that without the Johnson Amendment, people could funnel money through these churches for political purposes. So then what's to stop a church from, which is opaque, we don't get to see where their money goes. Well, now they've taken the money and then they use it for politics, and then
they just become a PAC then, don't they?
They just all would become a PAC.
So isn't it the principle that the political groups are accountable? They should be accountable, and there's certain election laws and all that apply to those groups that wouldn't apply to a church then?
Yep, exactly. Churches we're not able to audit them and to know where all their money is going. It's just a black hole of money. And so this is just another good way to help make sure that that is not being used as a loophole to funnel money into campaigns and stuff like that.
And churches are not required to disclose their donors. And many political organizations are required under the election law, like you mentioned, campaign finance law, to disclose donations over a certain amount. So.
Or just to look at their books, right, in general, their income and their...
Right. Churches don't have to file an I-90 like other 501c3 organizations, so there's really no financial transparency at all with these organizations.
So unfortunately, as we said, this is happening more and more. These pastors are being very brazen about it. Now, I will point out one awesome thing about this Greg Locke situation, though, is regardless of whether the IRS is enforcing the Johnson Amendment or not at this time, he felt pressure. I mean, whether he actually, we don't know what he did on the back end, but he clearly either actually revoked his 501c3 status because everyone spoke up and brought attention to this, or at least he felt like he had to lie about it. Whereas someone you saw the Josh clip in Arizona, he was very open about it and brazen and saying, "I'm going to break the rules and I'm going to keep trying to be tax exempt." But at least in this case, people through pressure and through information, sharing it online, TikTok, all of that, were able to get him to, feel like he had to do something about it.
So there is something we can do besides writing a letter to the IRS. We could put public pressure then.
Yeah, we can inform people about what's going on, get other people involved on the issue, and hopefully all of that together we could help push the IRS to do it. We help make sure that the Johnson Amendment stays. There has been talk, Trump talked about getting rid of the Johnson Amendment. There have been other people who have put things like that forward in the past to try to suggest we don't need it. And we definitely do need it, and we should tell people why. We should get people to support that, and we should make sure there's strong support for the Johnson Amendment.
The Johnson Amendment is not a constitutional amendment, is it?
No, it's in the IRS text.
IRS
it's a federal law that ensures that there's no politicking as a part of being a 501c3.
Is that it for clips or?
Yeah, I think that's all. I don't know if we have
Those
any
are our
questions or
recent
anything
things.
after all that.
We do have questions. Let me just refresh our page here and see what we have coming in. Some of these, I think, were already answered, but we can recap. Phil Monroe asks, how often is tax status revoked?
Yeah, that's so. Like I said, it's hard for us to know. There's at least one very famous case that actually created a case in the D.C. Circuit. Branch Ministries, I think is the name of the case, where we know that a church was involved in politicking and lost its status, and the court confirmed that that is the right thing to happen. I'm also aware of a couple other times. I think I was looking before we started the show, in 2004 and in 2009, churches very publicly were admonished by the IRS and had attempted to either have their status revoked or some action taken to do it. But other than those three incidents, there's just not a lot of public knowledge.
Didn't the Christian
about
Coalition lose it for a while, or one of those big right-wing legal groups? I think
I'm
I heard
not sure
that.
off the top
I don't
of my
recall
head.
that either.
But unfortunately, it's not as often as we see the people violating the rules. But it does happen from time to time.
Or if it happened, the church is not going to say it.
Right.
Right. So Dan Cancro asks, what's happening with Greg Locke? Is he paying taxes now that he told the IRS he doesn't care about his exemption? another question I think you kind of already answered.
Yeah,
but
like
we
I
can
said,
recap.
at this point, I know there's just been a lot. I've been following it and keeping track. We get more info. Certain people are looking into it, and we'll find things like, a registration page on an IRS website, or like a state registration for a nonprofit, and things like that. And so we don't really know what's going on with that. Obviously, like I said, our last action was we wrote to the IRS and said, look into this. Like, clearly there's something going on here. Make sure he's not tax exempt anymore.
So the question was whether he's paying taxes or not. Wouldn't that be a state thing rather than, losing your 501c3? Wouldn't Tennessee's laws also come into play?
Yeah, they could. That's the other confusion about it, is whether he was registered in the state, not federal, or if he revoked his federal status but is still claiming through the state. That's one of the big things people suspect is going on. But we don't know, unfortunately.
Because that could affect the property taxes on his church property then, right?
Right.
Right. And I think the first step is also to figure out with the IRS if they are tax exempt. If the IRS says, no, they're no longer tax exempt, then we can go to the state and also say they don't have the federal designation anymore. And now, did he dissolve it on the state level, and what's happening with that? So I think we're just sort of at step one here in determining what is what.
Yeah.
So Dan also asks a follow-up. Has the IRS ever adequately enforced the Johnson Amendment in the past? And does President Biden care about these violations?
Yeah, I'm not sure about whether they really have or not. Like I said, there's that one case where we know that they did it, and we know, like in our lawsuit, that they at least said they had the system in place to try to enforce these violations, but it's not very clear to us whether they are or not. And I don't know if you know, I haven't heard anything about Biden talking about the issue.
I certainly don't think the IRS has been adequately enforcing it, and there are a multitude of factors as to why. One of them is the fact that there were, years ago, there was the Tea Party controversies about some of those organizations that were just kind of getting rubber stamped by the IRS, and they had put a moratorium on any sort of review on a lot of tax-exempt organizations just because of that. But they also really were severely underfunded for a long time, so they didn't have enough money to engage in a lot of their work, including
So we should tax churches to get more money to fund the IRS.
Right. And then, the pandemic slowed everybody down, so there's a lot. But like I mentioned previously, there is efforts underway in Congress to give the IRS more money to do stuff like this. And I don't exactly know Biden's take on it, but I do believe that the administration is supportive of this. It's in the appropriations bill, and I think he initially put in some money for the appropriations, and Congress has sort of increased that. So, but I do think...
Yeah, and it's certainly, I would say, based on that, it's certainly better than the previous administration, which obviously Trump had literally said, we're getting rid of, like, he told people the Johnson Amendment was gone, even though obviously that's not true.
He didn't even understand it.
No.
Yeah.
So one final question. Melissa Haney writes, what can be done to broaden this oversight?
Well, as you noted, they're giving more money. That's probably the main thing is to get them the resources, and then I guess we just have to put pressure on leaders to that the Johnson Amendment is important and that the IRS should enforce it. Because if nobody cares, if nobody's speaking out about it, if it's not an issue that's in front of politicians, that's in front of the people who make these decisions, well, who is going to stop them from not, from just ignoring it or not making it a high priority? If we want the IRS to make this a high priority, we need to make it a high priority. We need to make sure everyone is supporting that.
And I'm just going to add on one of Annie Laurie's favorite taglines, which is it pays to complain. And so if people are aware of this happening in congregations across the country, they should definitely contact FFRF. We do write to the IRS and ask them to investigate. And the more complaints that they get about it, the bigger problem they'll see it as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Can our viewers or members themselves write to the IRS if they know about these complaints?
There is a link to sort of self-report tax violations, and we do have it on our website. We have an FAQ that talks about electioneering and what churches can and cannot do, and there's a link at the bottom of that page, too. but if that link is outdated, I have to be honest, I haven't gone onto that page in a long time. But if it's outdated, you can go to the IRS website and find it there.
But I think we would prefer that they report it to us for a variety of reasons. One, we know how to do. We can do it pretty quickly. It's not a burden on us. But also just then we're aware of everything that's going on. That way we can know. And in the future, especially if we're trying to make change, we can know we've had to complain about 10,000 churches. Obviously that we're not going to have that data if it's all coming from individuals.
But they could do both, right? They could individually write a letter and then to us too. So the more they hear, wouldn't that make a...
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any problem with reporting these terrible churches
So
too much.
any of you viewers who saw these 3 clips we just showed today, you're welcome to contact the IRS and complain about them. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they should.
Any more questions?
Nope, that was the final one.
Any more brilliant comments from either?
No, not for today.
You've reached your quota. Well, thanks. Chris Lyon is a constitutional attorney here with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, who writes many letters all over the country about violations. And Rebecca Markert is the legal director for 13 years now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, 13 years at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Legal director over people and many other attorneys like Chris. So thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you for watching our show. This concludes Ask an Atheist for this week. And be sure to check out our radio show too. Free Thought Radio is our weekly radio show, and it also becomes a podcast at ffrf.org/radio. This week we'll be listening to the atheist activist Bona Ahmed's presentation at our convention last fall. To find out where to hear Free Thought Radio, visit that website, ffrf.us or .org/radio.
And I'm just going to put a plug in for our Secular Coalition podcast, We Dissent. A new episode is on its way, so look for it wherever you get your podcasts.
If you want more information about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, check out our website at ffrf.org. See you next time on FFRF's Ask an Atheist.